didn't call it war. They called it slaughter. In the winter of 1937, the winds of war swept across eastern China. The Imperial Japanese Army was advancing with brutal precision. After capturing Shanghai in a bloody battle that lasted months, their eyes turned to Nanking, the capital of China at the time. A city rich in culture, history, and people who never imagined the nightmare that was about to unfold. The Japanese army approached Nanking in early December, tens of thousands of soldiers deep. The nationalist Chinese government, realizing their forces couldn't hold the city, decided to retreat. But not everyone could flee. The poor, the elderly, women, children, they stayed behind. Some believed the city might be spared. Others simply had nowhere to go. On December 13, 1937, Nanking fell. What followed wasn't just a military occupation. It was something far darker, something history would struggle to fully comprehend. As the Japanese troops poured into the city, the rules of war seemed to vanish. Streets that had once been filled with merchants and families became scenes of chaos. Soldiers looted homes, businesses, and public buildings. But what truly marked this invasion wasn't just the pillaging, it was the complete breakdown of humanity. Men suspected of being former Chinese soldiers were rounded up. Whether they were soldiers or just civilians didn't seem to matter. Many were shot, bayoneted, burned alive, or used for target practice. Some were buried in mass graves. Others were thrown into the Yangtze River, their bodies floating downstream for days. And that was only the beginning. Eyewitnesses reported unspeakable acts. Entire families were torn apart. Fathers were forced to watch their daughters be assaulted before they were executed. Mothers begged for the lives of their children only to be silenced by gunfire or worse. Women, from teenagers to the elderly, were raped, often in broad daylight. And once the soldiers were done, they were killed. There are estimates, but no one truly knows the exact numbers. Some say 20,000 women were raped. Others believe the number was much higher. The death toll? Somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000. But statistics only tell part of the story. Behind each number was a face, a name, a story that never got to finish. In the midst of this horror, a small group of foreigners stayed behind. Missionaries, doctors, businessmen, about 24 in total. They created what would come to be known as the Nanking Safety Zone. It was a demilitarized area designed to protect civilians. And in many cases it did. Tens of thousands of Chinese fled there, hoping for safety under foreign flags and Western eyes. One of the most well-known figures was John Rabe, a German businessman and a member of the Nazi Party. Ironically, it was his Nazi affiliation and the swastika armband that sometimes gave him the power to stop Japanese soldiers from entering the zone. He wrote extensively about what he saw, documenting the horrors with chilling detail. Inside the safety zone, the foreigners did what they could, treating the wounded, hiding women, standing guard. But even their influence had limits. Japanese troops routinely violated the zone, dragging people away, ignoring protests. The Foreign Committee sent telegrams to their embassies, to Tokyo, even to Hitler himself, begging for intervention. But nothing stopped the slaughter. The city's infrastructure collapsed. There were no services, no functioning hospitals, no law. Food became scarce. Bodies piled up in the streets. Dogs fed on corpses. The air stank of death. Survivors learned to stay silent, to hide, to not make eye contact with soldiers. Living became a matter of luck. What's even more haunting is how organized the Japanese army's brutality became. Some commanders issued orders allowing their soldiers to do as they pleased with the city. Others watched and said nothing. Some even held competitions, like which soldier could kill the most prisoners in a day using only a sword. There were photos taken, diaries kept. Some soldiers wrote home to their families about the adventures they were having. One Japanese newspaper published a contest between two officers to see who could kill 100 people first. It was printed like sports coverage, headlines, scores, pictures. The depravity wasn't hidden, it was celebrated. Meanwhile, the world was slow to respond. In the West, news of Nanking trickled out. Letters and reports made their way overseas. But by the time the full story emerged, the damage was done. The city had become a graveyard. For the people of Nanking, there was no clear end to the nightmare. The massacre continued for weeks, dragging into January of 1938. By then, much of the city had been destroyed. Homes were gone, families wiped out. Survivors were traumatized physically and mentally. The Japanese command tried to cover it up, pushing a narrative that the army had behaved with honor and discipline. But the evidence, the first-hand accounts, the photographs, the mass graves, said otherwise. And yet, even in the darkness, some light remained. The foreigners who stayed behind risked their lives every day to protect people they didn't even know. Chinese civilians showed incredible resilience, helping each other, hiding neighbors, caring for orphans. And years later, survivors would speak, breaking decades of silence to share what they had seen, what they had lived through. The fall of Nanking wasn't just a military defeat. It was a moral collapse, one that shook the conscience of the world. But it was also a warning, a scar in history that reminds us what happens when hatred, war, and silence go unchecked. In Part 2, we'll go deeper into the mass executions, the aftermath, and how the world eventually responded to the crimes of Nanking. Because some stories are too important to forget.